Well, hello again, and we are talking today about good fences make good neighbors, and it's a talk on boundaries and strategy and connection. And but first, I wanted to know: have you heard about the situation where there was heavenly confusion? No. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you. The preacher said to his congregation, I want everyone to know, everyone that is going to heaven, to stand up. So everyone stood up except for one individual. The preacher repeated, I can't talk today. I'm still stunned. The preacher repeated, I want everyone to stand up who's going to heaven. And the old man he remained seated. Finally, the preacher asked, Brother Williams, why aren't you standing? And the old man replied, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were getting a group to go now. No one wants to go now? You know what I was thinking? I was thinking I was going to take this row out and this row out, and then you'd actually be in the front row. All right, well, welcome to Sunday at Prescott. And today, like I said, we are talking about good fences make good neighbors. And I was having a fabulous conversation with Clay, and I said, hey, you know, as he always does, what are you talking about? And I said, I don't know. And we got to talking, and I said, I've really, in my life, been studying boundaries. And it reminded him of a poem, The Mending Wall, by Robert Frost. And there's a line in there that says, good fences make good neighbors. And I thought, that's a good talk. That is a good talk. So when I'm talking today about boundaries, it's a topic on balance. It's a topic on we all have great strengths. And I heard Ashanama Swami say recently that your greatest strength can be your biggest weakness. If you like to talk, and you talk too much, then you're, who do you think I'm talking about? I don't know. But, you know, it becomes out of balance. So if you think about your greatest strength and how it can become your greatest weakness, in there in the middle is balance. Also, we could probably call that boundaries. So for me, boundaries is balance, a sense of understanding, your strategic way that you move through your life, how we get people to listen to us, or if you are a retired people pleaser, how you want to please or take responsibility for making, for other people's happiness, which we are not. We are not responsible for that. And so as I thought about my own my own life and who I have made responsible for my happiness, probably my husband mostly, but you know, we all have families. And as I studied with my teacher and shared some of my life with him, he said, oh, your family didn't really have boundaries. And I said, oh, never really thought about it that way. And so I often, as I do, figured if this is something that really wasn't taught in my family, it might not have been taught in others. And the importance of boundaries in a spiritual community, but not only in a community, but work, families, personal physical space, and that boundaries are personal limits and guidelines that individuals set to safeguard their physical, emotional, and personal well-being. These boundaries help us to maintain a spiritual diversity because we all are unique individuals traversing path. And of course, we like for people to be just like us and to take our ideas and want to move with them. And we sometimes can be very forceful from our point of view. And I think boundaries bring us into a place of curiosity, a place of wanting to know more. And in The Mending Wall, the poem is really about this wall that was on a property made of stone, and there was an apple tree, and the person on the left side of the fence really thought the wall was getting in the way of his apple tree, and the other person on the other side of the fence thought it was getting in the way of connection. And so I really took this as the balance between boundaries and connection. If you have too many boundaries and you're too forceful with them, you lose connection. And if you have too much of an earnest desire, and I mean this in a big way, right? To connect, you can go into people pleasing and take responsibility for people's happiness, and then you lose yourself. So I thought how beautiful it was. Good fences make good neighbors, meaning good boundaries, good confidence, good self-awareness make good fences, which creates connection. So the aim of the talk today is to really talk about how these boundaries help us respect and connect. And last week I talked a little bit about with children and learning how to be a mom all over again in a new way. It is connect and correct. And this one is really boundaries and connect, and looking at the balance of being open and approaching from curiosity and assuming positive intent. And quite often we don't, and I'm guilty of it. I hear something, I get a hold of it, I get mad, and then I'm like, wait, is that even true? And my husband might say something to me like, how do you know? And I go, because I know. I can feel it. And he's like, really? And he'll start asking me a series of questions. And then I realize, dang it, I got to apologize because he's right. But boundaries is also about owning your own point of view, your personal strategic strategy for getting through life. And sometimes that way that we do, if we're not self-aware or familiar of our personal strategies, they can get in the way. And so Ernest Holmes says this, never let anything cause you to doubt your ability to demonstrate the truth. Conceive of your word as being the thing. See the desire of your heart as accomplished fact, and rest in perfect confidence and peace and certainty. This quote really does speak to the importance of maintaining a clear and strong sense of self and purpose, right? When we know ourselves, we know our place, we can read a room, we have patience in wanting to say something and know when it needs to be said. We understand how our words are deeply impactful to others. It aligns the idea of boundary setting to protect one's inner peace and one's spiritual path without making other people responsible for it. That's what I really like about in my research on boundaries. So I was meeting with my teacher, and he was been helping me to have a new way to think and see the world, a new process in which to filter information through, because I didn't have that when I was growing up, and our education system wasn't really geared towards it. And so he has really challenged me to pick 5 topics and then to go research them and report back to him with a report. And so every time I go back to him with the report, he's like, okay, now give that to me more succinctly. And as I do it, I start to recognize I know it more, and I can speak from that point of view personally and say, somebody said to me when I first got here, as I was talking, they said, when you're talking about something that someone else said, it's a good idea to go, and what I think about that is. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting comment, right? And it stuck. And so I don't know who you are. You might know who you are. But it's really true, right? As you start to gather information and you start to want to move through your life with boundaries or a more defined presence and respect for yourself, which garners respect from other people. You start to speak from, and how I feel about that is, right? Or if you're trying to give a boundary or set up a boundary, you might say, when you do that, it makes me feel. And then you're taking responsibility for it. And that is the really, really challenging part about boundaries is, if there were none in a relationship, no matter what type it is, it can be very challenging because some people can take it very personally. You might be afraid when you start to assess those boundaries. But what it actually does is creates a world that we say works for everyone. Because through boundaries, connection happens. Through boundaries, people get to know you and your authentic self. I can think of many situations in my life that if boundaries were there, I would have really helped people to understand how I like to be treated. And what I was doing by not confronting them, because I don't like confrontation, was allowing them to continue and never learn that about me. And then it gave me something to continue to complain about, and it gave them the opportunity to keep showing up the same way. And then this friction happened, and then we never really got to meet each other without the mask, to be authentically aligned, to see really what we had to offer each other for our lives to grow. The benefits of boundaries and values is promoting respect and understanding. Setting clear boundaries helps us establish mutual respect in relationships. Improving communication, the process of setting boundaries requires an open and honest communication. It fosters healthier dynamics. How about that? It fosters healthier dynamics. Healthy boundaries prevent toxic relationships and patterns from overextending themselves into a relationship. And it prevents us from feeling taken advantage of or losing oneself in a relationship. It also helps us to show up clearer and more confident. It helps us to be present in a conversation without worry. And as I thought about Jackson's song and what ministry really means and showing up for those people in my life, because of our beautiful children, we have a lot of people that come through our life that have a lot of issues, and I like to save people. And so it was really hard to set those boundaries of, hey, you are supposed to be here on this day at this time, and I open door policy, show up whenever you want because I love you and I want you to get better. And then I would get mad that they did that. And then you realize, boundary setting has nothing to do with the other person. It's the I statement of, here's what I want, here's what I need, and you can do it or not. And if you choose not to, then, we'll have to have a different type of conversation. But it also works for the other person that might have, because if you're that type of person, who's going to show up in your experience to energetically meet that is people that don't set boundaries. And my teacher said to me, well, it's okay, because karma is such that if you don't learn to stand up for yourself, you're going to keep meeting people that help you learn to stand up for yourself. And so if you don't get it the first time, don't worry, it's going to come back around for you to get it again. So it really does help for you to be authentic, because if you think about children, structure, boundaries, commitment, consistency, right? And if they're not raised with that, they're lost in the world. I met a young man yesterday. They live across the street, and their grandma died, and it's been a difficult life for him. And his mom sent him this message that he shared with me, and I thought, oh my gosh. And then as he started talking, I could see that there was lack of structure and consistency in his life. At 16, he was really quite lost. And I thought to myself, what would his life have been like had a boundaries or consistency, or if we had really somebody showed up in his life to teach him the importance of those things. You'd have a better self-worth. You would know that you have value. And that's what I said to him. I go, I don't know what that message really means, but you have value, and there's a part of you that is most beautiful, and I invite you to find that part of yourself. And so it also, in spiritual context, we have different modalities, right? It's cultural and social conditioning. We have the fear of stepping on someone's toes that have different types of religious beliefs that we have. Maybe the path that you traversed here, we all come from different spaces, and some of us have acquired a distaste for certain things. But as we come into an environment like this, the boundary is that we are looking at those to meet them and heal and be able to move forward so that we can see what we went through isn't who we are. The risk of not setting boundaries, you could get burned out. Exhaustion trying to meet everybody's needs. It's very challenging. Loss of self-respect and personal identity. You start to wear masks and want to be who you are to everybody you meet in order to keep them happy with you, when ultimately I have found it doesn't work. They'll find something to be unhappy about, and you will own it. And then your life will not move forward in the way that you want. The increased likelihood of relationships, issues, and conflicts. I mean, families, right? This is our primary karma. And through that, boundaries, I think about my life and my family. And I was telling Tom my stories, and he said, woo. And I was like, oh, yeah. And there's a little guilt and shame arose. But then I realized we all do better when we know better. That the purpose of talking about boundaries today and the purpose of learning boundaries and connection is so that we can meet and magnify the teachings that we have to offer here, and that we're not infighting about our old identities and our old beliefs, but they were magnifying the science of mind principles because we are connecting, and people want to know why we're so darn joyful, right? They want to know. And I know that I've been guilty of not always doing that, but my commitment is connection. My commitment is love. And my commitment is to look at myself and to see within me what needs to be healed. Now and to also be honest about it and not be afraid of disappointment. And I invite you into that in our community so we can learn to express in a whole new way and build good fences and become great neighbors. The risk, again, of not setting boundaries, it diminishes our collective good. It waters down our message. We are here because love brought you here. Your neighbor might have pulled you and said, hey, show up because we got something good, but Spirit called to you to be here because it wishes to express in your life in a bigger way. So the question for reflection today for you is, how do your current boundaries help you to define and protect your personal space? Can you identify where those where they need to be clearer? And how are they keeping you from connecting to a person that you don't know or you find aversion to? I invite you today to have a conversation with someone you don't know and practice listening, and then let the other person talk, and then you speak, and then create a question of curiosity so that we can get to know each other on a broader and higher level so that we can flourish. And when we go to Starbucks, the energy is magnifying out of us, and they'll be like, why are you so happy? I want some of that. And you should say, well, you should just go down to that place right there, CSL, and you can get some. And together we can grow. Together we can honor one another. Together we can listen and truly fall in love. I look forward to connecting with you on a whole new level, in a whole new way. From my heart to yours, I love you, and I really appreciate you showing up today. Namaskaram. And I am just going to ground that in prayer for us while Jackson tickles the ivory keys. So take a breath. Just knowing that we're not going to heaven today, that there is a sense of safety, that the great teachers of our time, going back thousands of years, knew how to cultivate connection and also stand their ground for the most beautiful things in the world, that so much so that they're recognized today as our spiritual teachings. Knowing that the first and primary boundary is I exist, I love, I am, I'm here. And as we cultivate that to deeper levels and higher awarenesses, then the idea of having to even invoke a boundary goes away, because that true, authentic, highest self, we are already connected in that realm. And as our personalities are cultivated, as we heal those wounds and traumas that keep us separated, we know that this teaching brings us to that place of looking at ourselves, of being highly in tuned and aware of our strategies of how we move through life so that we can change them, so that we can change our thinking and therefore our life changes, so that we can go inward on the journey and connect to that higher part of ourselves that says, you are love, you are light, you are calmness, you are purity. It says, there is only peace, and you are that peace. There is only love, and you are that love. There is only light, and you are that light. And in that space, in that beautiful, energetic feeling that makes your hair stand up on your arms, in that cultivating of dynamic conversation and curiosity, that we step into the flow, knowing that that highest part of ourselves takes over, and that anything unlike this can simply be set aside. That love is the call. And love is the answer. I send these words to the whispers of the wind to be taken out and land in your heart and open any space inside of you that needed to hear these words from Spirit today, knowing that they do their dynamic job of transformation to the highest realms on the path of knowledge, on the path of inward know thyself. As we release these words into that wind, I say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, life. Thank you, God. And so it is.